Well, one of the hottest films currently showing in Chinese cinemas is no doubt The Flowers of War, directed by Zhang Yimou. The film is set in Nanjing in the 1930s against the backdrop of the Japanese invasion and the notorious massacre in the city. Christian Bale plays the flawed hero who rescues a group of prostitutes and schoolgirls and tries to protect them from the ruthless Japanese invaders. Now, reportedly having taken around 5 years to complete, and certainly the most expensive domestic film produced at over 95 million US dollars, the movie has attracted plenty of attention since it began playing in mid-December. Financially, it's certainly been a success, with box office takings in the first week alone put at over $57 million. The storyline has, of course, once again raised that brutal Japanese invasion of China in the 1930s and 40s and the many atrocities that were carried out. A topic, of course, always guaranteed to stir up the simmering anger many Chinese feel about that period in history. Now, while the movie has been an undoubted success in China, overseas reviews are more mixed. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a bare 5 out of 10, with many reviewers calling the script contrived and schmaltzy. Other reviewers claimed it was a political propaganda film aimed at building up China's international image. So what are Chinese net users' opinions on the film and that period of history? And how do they view those comments from reviewers abroad? Well, to get an idea of what's being said online, let's join our researcher Esther Dung in the newsroom. Now, Esther, first of all, what are Chinese net users' general thoughts on this film, The Flowers of War? What are you hearing?
Well, first I have to say this film has caused lots of discussion online, and plenty of influential Chinese web portals have published features on it. For example, 163.com goes to town with a feature page entitled The Flowers of War, the best Chinese film we've ever had. But Yahoo.com, the Chinese version of Yahoo.cn, sharply criticized the film as overly commercial and says that it has nothing to do with patriotism. Well, QQ.com probes into the film from another angle and asks, why did the prostitutes have to die? Were the lives of students more honorable than theirs? And when it comes to Chinese posters' opinions, first I like to bring in Han Hong, a very famous Chinese singer. Well, she was obviously affected by the film's subject matter and vented her anger on her microblog, actually using unrepeatable language to express her feelings towards Japanese people. And she even swore she would boycott Japanese products. Although she deleted the statement later, it has caused heated discussion among net users. And actually, iPhone.com, a popular web portal, ran a survey on this, which attracted over 120,000 posters. Of this, over 3/4 chose the option, I support Han Hong's stance, have the same hatred towards Japanese, and want to see them punished. But I've also seen a lot of posters sharing more general impressions of the film, like this poster from Guangdong. The movie is really touching and thought-provoking. Both the story itself and the way the film tells the story are good. But my heart was full of sadness when I watched it in the cinema.
Okay, Esther, thanks for the spoiler there. As regards Han Hong, I think the fact that a blockbuster movie reduces her to making racist insults says, well, more about her intellect than it does about either the movie or history. But it certainly shows, and it's quite obvious from that survey you quoted, that this film has struck a raw nerve amongst a lot of people. There's a lot of anger. Can you explain why that anger is so evident, even amongst young people, 75 years after the event? And what sort of role do you think the film has had in terms of telling those young people today about that period of history?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, I guess the main reason that this film has attracted such a big Chinese box office is exactly because it deals with Japan's invasion of China in the 1930s. Education and tradition mean that period of history has remained a historical scar and humiliation in many Chinese people's minds, even for young people today. And American viewers have to understand that Chinese kids have the official version of the war rammed down through their throats from the time they can walk. So of course, it doesn't take much to bring it to the surface again. And obviously, this film has reminded many people of that part of history. For example, Yu Feifei says on QQ.com, first, I like to show my respect to these prostitutes. We should remember history and never forget the past. Well, this poster named Liu Meiping has this to say on Doubai.com. I had a quarrel with a British colleague over the film. She can't understand why the image of Japanese in Chinese films is always bad and why Chinese people hate them so much. She argued that by the same logic, the Jews should hate the Germans. In her opinion, the wars were the mistakes made by the generation of their grandparents. So why do Chinese people still use the same eye to see today's Japanese people? I told her that it's because Japan always denies its invasion and the crimes it committed against China. Well, Chen Meiren的马甲 says on the same site, it's hard to explain to foreigners. It's actually the education we've received as kids that has formed our attitude towards Japanese people. To be honest, of course, it's impossible that a nation has no good guys, but only bad and evil ones. And also come across some comments from Japanese posters. Kito Yasukuza is a Japanese student who graduated from China's Peking University and currently writes a newspaper column, which is quite popular among Chinese college students. Recently, he was invited to Qiang Qiang San Ren Xing, a news program on the Hong Kong-based Phoenix Television. On that, she said, there are some Japanese people who justify Japan's invasion of China, but there are also different voices which say they feel sorry about what Japan did to China, but the latter are never shown on Chinese screen.
Right. Finally, Esther, this film has had a generally good reception here in China. And as we mentioned before, however, abroad it's got some good reviews and some bad reviews. Of these, some have criticised Zhang Yimou for making what they call a political propaganda film. So how do Chinese posters view that kind of comment?
Well, on this question, lots of posters certainly can't agree. For example, 大大嘴狼 asks on Baidu.com, for me, the crimes Japanese committed in Nanjing was far more cruel and bloody than what's portrayed in the film. Some Western media said this film is brainwashing Chinese viewers since the Japanese weren't that bad. So I'm wondering, if they hadn't been that bad, then why did the US still drop 2 atomic bombs to Japan? And Hai Li agrees. The Europeans have made so many films about the German massacre of the Jewish people in the Holocaust, but they are seldom seen as political propaganda. So why is our film about the Nanjing massacre labeled as propaganda? But even though posters don't welcome the coverage of this film in the Western media, it doesn't mean everybody is standing behind the movie. Actually, with more and more people watching the film, more and more discussions and criticism on the value of this film have been raised. Like Wang Delan says on his blog, what the Japanese did can't be erased, but this film is based on a novel. Is it history or just a drama? When kids watch this, how can they view the real history in an objective way? And Shan Shibing has an article entitled, In What Way Should History Be Remembered on finance.com.cn, and here is what he has to say. As a representative of power and money, Zhang Yimou makes this film full of cheap erotica and commercial stunts, instead of dealing respectfully with humanity and ethics. There's no value in this film. Well, finally, this anonymous poster on QQ.com has this conclusion. The Flowers of War is probably not the best film Zhang Yimou ever made, but it is definitely a film that gives every Chinese person something to think about.
Well, that's certainly true. I guess certainly some food for thought for Chinese audiences there. Thanks for that, Esther.